this is kind of the discussion portion for the community part of CPOT meeting. So I guess we can open it up and go down the list. So what brings you here today is the first question. Cannabis?
Equity.
It wasn't the free dinner. That brings me every meeting, man.
Knowledge.
I get here early. Just for that. Yeah, believe me. Starts at 5. No, but yeah. All right, and so really, what about cannabis?
I want to know more about it, like the knowledge of cannabis industry.
Yeah.
Get deeper into it.
Anybody else?
I'm here because I'm really concerned about the equity and the fact that so much money went to law enforcement, and I'm just really curious about where that went and what they used it for actually. So I'm very concerned about the inequality, in my opinion.
Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
How far do you want us to go?
Just in case. No, it really concerns me. It was one of the things that I brought up at the meeting as soon as I saw that budget, and I found it really concerning. And it's just the fact that we're here so far along without any real answers.
Yeah.
In my opinion,
I agree. I think it's imperative that it gets fixed.
we need to find out.
Is the new budget proposal out for next fiscal year? Or are you talking about the current?
No, we're talking about the past one, which was $3.5 million to law enforcement, which was for what? And it was for education and transportation. What was it? Education, transportation.
Well, we've already given a whole nother percentage of the tax so far over to, it's been distributed, I believe, hasn't it? So,
I was going to look it up because I could actually give you some numbers if I could pull up the document. But yes, there's been 3 years allocation, and I'll just pull up some numbers so I can give you a sense of what that is. But the lion's share has been to transportation and police. And when you hear the council discussion about the audit, they may, I don't think they're wrong, but they say that the issuing law was written to give council that flexibility. So they may be technically right, but that really wasn't voters' intent, right? And so there's a real mismatch there. So I think it's high on people's radar, and that's why there is no current proposal for what this next year is yet. That's why they're having this budget work session. And bureaus are submitting requests, possibly, or this is the time we're submitting them, to ask for funding. We're going to, from Civic Life, we're making the request for the social equity grants.
You said you're making a bigger request?
Oh, no, we're just making a request. Currently, we don't get any commitment year over year. It's if they have it. And our total investment over 3 years has been like $1.3 million. And those one-time funding. So they had a 1 year, they decided it would be $900,000 1 year and $400,000 another year. This year we have no guarantee of anything. So we're asking that that the investment be an continuing ongoing support, so we can rely upon it year after year. So, and I'm just going to pull up
dollars as well.
Exactly.
No, exactly. Yeah, to me it's imperative that we've got two things to do, just broadly: statewide equity, and then to ongoing. It sounds like a larger percentage of that money. And they all get reelected, so holding them accountable.
Right.
We also kind of slid it into the response to the social equity framework is that accountability for the statewide tax allocation as well. So,
speaking of that, so I know the city can make recommendations for state legislation. So is that something the city is looking to put on the radar?
We don't have a current legislative concept, but where we have asked for made a social priority for the state legislative agenda for the city of Portland has been on social consumption, and this year it's going to be around that social equity thing. But we have not made a specific legislative request to, first our process, we make that to government relations, then government relations takes them from all the bureaus, then they have council adopt what our legislative priorities are, and we have not made a specific one about tax allocation of the state. But I'd be curious to hear what people are saying.
So when you say we, are you referring to your office?
Yes, in particular. And I'm not aware that anyone else at the city has made that request, and we would definitely be consulted if not originating such a request. But we have not yet. We've done social consumption, the need for it. We're weighing in at their invitation on what a social equity framework should look like. We have not done as far as tax allocation yet.
So I know Jeanette is working on advocating for the state. Is that something that she could bring to CPOT?
I would ask, in terms of the process for how community and business priorities get reflected in the CPOT process. I'm sure there's so if the question is if the community members or business leaders wanted to bring a policy or legislative concept to CPOT, CPOT has actually done some of that because they've taken hundreds of ideas that we've already heard and put it into this kind of framework. But there should be a continuing mechanism for continuing that. Do you want to speak a little bit more about that?
So I think it would probably just be coming to any of the communities, or whether it's within the community or it's at City Hall, all CPOT meetings are open to the public. So, and there's time after each meeting to make requests or proposals. I'm just going to bring it to CPOT as a group, and then they can further discuss it on how to move forward with any kind of recommendations to either the city or anything further.
I think though, I think there might be a difference. I think just to clarify the city's role is that, I think you may have missed it, there was a letter that was sent that was feedback on the, which hospital is it? 488. But the drafting of the legislation, I think that maybe that's more the question. Is that what you're referring to? Is like actually like doing like having advocacy effort to like draft the legislation, or just more general?
I would say there's lots of processes, and maybe I confused the matter.
Yeah.
So I think you were on, because to my knowledge, I know the city can create concepts. So you were on point.
Okay.
So
and just as a matter of how our Office of Government Relations, small but mighty team, they do all of our policy work at the state level. And every year they ask bureaus, what are some legislative concepts or legislative priorities that you have? We submit them, and then they're not all accepted. They look for readiness, political partners, and then they also have to call them all, and they bring back to City Council, usually in November, to say this is what our policy priorities are. And so in that process, do we have an opportunity to put something forward as an idea, at least for consideration? Yes, we do. We would actually like the guidance from this body, and part of that guidance is here. One of the recommendations also, though, is exactly what you're talking about, is around social equity, number one, and these include the transparency, tax allocation decisions, and outcomes. So it would fit within this framework, but then anything specific, I think, would need a little bit more work. The other thing is we need this body to...
We don't have to get in it right now. We're just unlocking it for later.
And then also, at a certain point, we need this body to stay at a kind of high-level policy framework without actually writing the policies themselves. So there are many constructive uses for this group to help advance ideas like that. And we would fully expect that their community... I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that their community and industry leaders and other partners doing it on the community side, and we want that because we also want to point to the public will building and the community readiness for these ideas. Because a policy idea that the city has that's not backed up by the community or by industry is not going to go very far. And then you never know, so your work just as community leaders and as business leaders, or as researchers or as health folks, etc. That is always that's always work you can do. And when we see that, that helps us make the case that this should be a city priority. But if there are no community voices or industry voices making the case, it's going to be hard for us to say it's a city priority. Because then we're like, we can't be out there alone. Who's going to come support this? And also, we're not the credible messenger. Community members are, and so are business, and I'm sure other people too.
So the process to get to that concept is you're saying is through public comment, and then from there.
Yes. So if we had community support and political support from our commissioners, we could work together in conjunction with our Office of Government Relations to potentially propose something to the legislature.
Well, I want to throw that alley-oop to Jeanette and see what you guys move forward.
So, just as another opportunity, it comes after the hearing. It comes after the budget work session. But your next meeting in March is March 13th, and Commissioner Daly is the commissioner in charge of our bureau. She's been which we actually try to get her to this meeting, but her schedule is such that she's double, triple booked. But there'll be another opportunity, and we don't only have to invite our commissioner in charge. You can invite all the commissioners at a certain point, but I think thinking about a longer-term strategy, especially at the state level, that would be important. And then I'm just going to make one last comment. The conversations we can have with you as bureau, as city public servants, is actually on the bigger and on the broader level of just policy. Conversations you can have with commissioners and electeds, that's a completely different. You're allowed to have so many more different conversations as constituents, talking to your elected officials, than we can do as a bureau, because that's going to have to always be obeying, Oregon statute and political participation laws. But don't forget, you have all those options, and you know all the same people, so we can make those connections.
Hey, so we were talking a minute ago about the budget and the allocation. I'm just curious, do you know what percent of the 17% that the state brings in, how much of that, how big of a piece of that is generated in Portland by Portland businesses? So Portland dispensaries, producers?
I do not know that. I don't know if anyone.
I mean, it's got to be a huge majority of the money that goes in the state.
Easy to find out.
Most of they have a breakdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of it goes to education.
No, I mean, I'm saying how much of the tax revenue is generated from businesses here in Portland City.
Oh,
Yeah, or the state. And
You could make a public records request to the
yeah,
state and get
I
it pretty
bet it's
easily.
probably pretty easy to look up. I just
Really
it just
easy.
came to me a second ago.
I think
for the state?
So the state brings in, they tax cannabis 17% annually. So let's say 2019. How much of that money, that cannabis tax, did the state bring in? How much of it, what percentage of it was generated by Oregon tax or Portland tax cannabis businesses? And
and
what
then it's more
about that is,
yeah, then he was like,
maybe the state is scoffing at ideas proposed by the city of Portland, then that could be something considered. We generate 80% of the tax revenue brought in through the cannabis tax. Maybe some of these concerns and ideas should be listened to at a different level than Brookings.
I think it came out to like 7.
Yeah, I don't know that answer. That's very compelling. I think that it would be the state who could tell us that.
Yeah, if you want to know the specific amount is brought in for taxes first.
By Portland,
By Portland.
I'm sure that's a Google thing. I can just look it up.
It may not be. It may not be.
Yeah,
You'd be surprised. Public data. It's not like. I mean, it's half the population of Portland, but I don't know if it translates.
Guys, because the tourism too. I guess number 2 is this is the definition we currently use for equity. Equity is both the means to healthy communities and that benefits us all. Equity requires the intentional examination of systemic policies and practices that, even if they have the appearance of fairness, may, in effect, serve to marginalize some of the perpetuate disparities.
We're constantly looking at any time we
What resonates with you
tobacco retail license
or any of us?
we put on the
I
get it, but I don't. We never move forward without that. You know, sometimes we struggle with that. Community members or owners.
Law enforcement, community.
So we'll have to go back and readjust our lens.
Yeah, it's kind of broad.
I see wonky. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can definitely share it. It's also online. You can just Google.
Is
What
this
was the
civic
question
lives
again?
definition, or where did the definition do?
You know, that is actually kind of a version that has been adopted, been around for almost, I'm not even sure, it's like 5 or 10 years. And it's kind of, it comes from several sources, including the Coalition Communities of Color and Multnomah County. And the Coalition Communities of Color, more than a decade ago, was working with, especially Multnomah County, for equitable investment in communities of color. They had to create some standards about, and then so they helped the county and then the region, because many people adopted it. Some concepts like culturally specific, what does that mean, right? And then also equity, defining it. So there's lots of definitions, and most of them are good. But I guess this one is trying to point to, it's not just the outcome, but it's also the process, the ends and the means, right? And then I think with this definition is used because a lot of people think about equity and racism as interpersonal or internalized racism, but it's most of it is structural, and that's where most people, we as a society, don't know how to talk about it as well. It's not just about my personal racism against you. It's actually structural. It's in our institutions. It's in our concepts. Blah, blah. So that is trying to lift that up. That if you're not talking about it, systemic racism, then you're going to miss much of your ability to address it. And then I think this definition was talking about lots of things sound fair, but they're not. Lots of things sounds fair. Like everyone gets X, right? Oh, it's everyone, let's start at the same starting point. But those things that often sound fair really just like to erase historical realities, erase the fact that we don't have the same starting points. And so I think that's what we like about this definition, is because it points to a lot of big concepts. Is it kind of tortured in its presentation? Yeah. Yeah. Can we find better ways to do it? I think
finding
so.
anything that encompasses what you're trying to do is going to be nearly impossible.
But that's why we gravitate toward this one versus some other ones, because we want to make sure we always talk about the historical. We didn't get here overnight. And it's not just about how I feel about you or what our table looks like. It's much, much deeper than that. That's what we want to hold ourselves to. And we also say it's not just about the process. You can have intention of process if you don't have outcomes. So we wanted to make it about all of that. That said, very true feedback. Wonky, tortured. What does it mean? But those are the things that we like about it. But what's missing, or what's not sitting right with you about that? We'd love to hear that as well.
It's long.
Yeah.
Keep up.
I guess the second part of this is, would you make any changes to this statement, or this definition of equity?
It's so hard because it feels so like sterile, but like the notion of like the historic nature, particularly of racism, and like how that has impacted systems. Like it's so heavy, but when I read this, I'm like, I don't know. It's like it sits with me in this weird way. So, but also when I read this, I'm like, it's the history. There's no word of history in here, and I know it's just general equity, but it also doesn't talk about like race or any other sort of like ways that might happen. So I don't know. That's just like what's that in my head.
There's no action. Equity requires intentional examination.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great statement.
Yeah.
It doesn't encompass what do you do about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could examine till the cows come home.
Yeah, right. Now what? That's the question.
So Casey, you were saying, as far as the equity definition, the second part of it is, would you make any changes to this definition?
And my largest concern is
trying to talk about systematic oppression and racism.
I mean, thankfully,
Dealing with the systematic racism.
but the fact that it was even
So I see like if
that crap piece of original really sad.
I mean, like just in the cannabis industry, when all of a sudden it became legal, who had access to capital, right? So it's like, it sounds fair, everyone has a start, you could apply, you could get into business. It's the American way, and it's like, and it's, you can, yeah.
Some would argue, including myself, that it's still like that. It's just become more expensive over the last 3 or 4 years, and access has shrunk considerably. Large amount of business that's come in. What is one hope and one concern you have related to cannabis? These are just everybody pop in with whatever.
my concern is that the police will continue to benefit
And they kind of benefit both sides of it. You know, they benefit on it being illegal, and they benefit on it being legal. They're getting paid.
I actually helped one that really did attract the attorney, one that paid the attorney good. Two things that I was most passionate about were that
the one hope that I have is
obviously education, because I believe that's how we're going to be able to help the community.
It becomes less regulated. I think regulation has gotten out of control.
In the process of doing that, we were able
revenue
to
stream.
get 4%, as you guys know.
Some bleeding, small businesses dry.
Education.
10 days to comply with whatever else
My
you see
worry
dreams
is
up.
that
The previous week,
there's no oversight more than tax revenue
getting kind of crazy.
on what's happening to it.
Also makes the legal market too expensive for consumers.
Yeah.
So then the prices of the legal market are too high, and it's unnecessary. Why do I really need an exit bag? What does that cost the business, and how does that jack up the prices of the legal market? It's ridiculous.
I think right before I left, you and I had a call with Jesse about
Yeah, it's just if you really want to move that needle, let's really take a look at regulation that's silly.
I agree, and I think after this is one of the pitches I had given to the agency was, after 5 years, it's a lot of it had to grow that way just to get started. But we're 5 years in, it's time for us to just go back to the basics, look at it again, make this simpler, make these requirements something that the average person can actually, comply with and read. They don't need to hire attorneys or consultants or anything to just get through the paperwork. So that's what I would hope that the state could do.
What do I dream about that a lot. It's not even I think about it, I dream about it.
Trust me, I did too.
And it really comes down to common sense approach. There was hysteria in the beginning. I mean, you were there in the beginning.
I was.
And nobody knew it was across the board. Citywide, statewide. I mean, the really loud voices were the proponents to cannabis legalization. And unfortunately, they're the ones who made the impact. And so the regulation was really strict.
I don't know if it'll pass.
Examined them. We weren't loud enough. It's not popular. At the time, it wasn't popular to come out as a proponent of cannabis because he still felt scrutinized. I mean, even today, it's called canna-bigotry now. But it's a real thing. I think since you're the first one I heard say it a month or two ago, and it's really kind of sunk in.
Oh, I learned that from this group, so.
Oh, okay.
It's actually parts of the young.
Is it? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put it in your report. I'm like,
I
that's
need to pay
great.
better attention to these things. But,
We can't sell that package.
you know, so I guess another one of my hopes is moving forward. When we put together small groups like this, even though it's small groups, everybody in here can go out and get 3 people or 4 people to attend some of the bigger meetings. Then our voice will be heard a little bit louder, and maybe there will be more common sense put into the regulation or lightening up the regulation. I mean, a lot of the proponents have pretty big groups and audiences, you know, to rally and come to champion anti-cannabis type sentiment. I mean, so that's one of my hopes.
Go to the legislature with something actionable and say, hey, this math program is something we need in our community. If we're not learning math the right way, we can demonstrate it.
I'm just curious.
Was able to do this, and the thing I'm going to do after that is
what the city is doing
while I wholeheartedly
this type of
support
training.
drug law reform,
I don't like using equity no more.
I think putting drug
it's been
addiction
so watered
before
down, and people
the
don't
communities
really understand what it
children
means.
and the interest of children in the
But I'm
communities
curious
that
of what
work
type of
with us
training
is
the
not
city is
the right
providing for people who are
prioritization
in
of that.
possession of
I
power,
don't think there should be a
like
lot in the report. I think
CPOT
we really need to focus on
and
white business.
different
I think
offices
that
that
while the freaking money is here, the
push
hundreds of
equity
millions of
in a
dollars
sense, but do they
that
really
is owed to those
understand
people. We sold that.
You know what I mean? Like,
we cannot allow that
what it really
to
is.
pass. So,
Because
that,
they're in privileged
Yeah.
positions at the end of the day. So I'm just curious about that.
Well, the city does,
not all future.
used to
Everything above. It's everything
brought
above
back the
45
Office of
million
Equity and Human Rights about 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. And one of the things that Office of Equity and Human Rights has done is require, we've adopted citywide equity goals. And each bureau has 5-year equity plans. But I appreciate what you said, that the word equity has now become kind of a little victim of our success. Now people speak about it so much that it's been really watered down. And what are we really talking about, right? And so people are required, city staff are required to get equity 101 training. Everyone is, but it's a 101, which is not really, just entry level, right? And then
let's help the people who are trying right now.
in terms of how are we holding ourselves accountable to things that we've adopted and passed and resolve, it's a real mixed bag because I always, one of the things we talked about is if the outcomes are not equitable, if you see the disparities, if you see that, then we're not doing our job. We're not doing our job yet, right? So it's a real mixed bag, but there have been some steps to get everyone at a starting point around equity. But here's some other things that we need to do as a city, and we haven't gotten there. And don't necessarily quote me, but I think there's a really healthy movement to say, let's not just say communities of color. Let's say if it's Black or Indigenous or immigrant refugee, or specifically say Bhutanese or Slavic. And when we talk about racism sometimes, we just call it out. Are we talking about anti-Black racism? Are we talking about sovereignty? What are we talking about? So I think there's a call just to get beyond the 101. Has that taken hold? No, not so much. But it and communities are also trying to swoop into office. Especially elected office, people who don't need training, but people who come with that lived experience and analysis already. So I think there's lots of efforts, but as a society, we're at really different. I don't see it either. So, but there are attempts. But you're saying, what is the city trying to do? Well, we have Equity and Human Rights Bureau. We have adopted citywide equity plans. Every bureau has a plan for how to get to racial, and we are leading with race at the city. So there are some steps, and 168 years later, after we founded Portland on native lands, it seems really late, too little, but we need to keep going. So it's a start.
We can't allow this. The two.
I know, not satisfying answer. Sorry. You're
asking.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to the meeting.
Sorry, it was one meeting on top of another meeting, so I'm sorry to
Could
be
you
late.
introduce yourself?
My name is Jackie Gethner. I'm a community member. I have a nonprofit called Women of a Certain Age. My background in cannabis has been, I'll be 70 next month, and it's been since I was 12 years old. I've been both in the business of cannabis over the years as well as a consumer. And I'm here, well, I understand part of the reason that we're here, but I have some really big concerns about cannabis and elder populations. I think we're looking at a huge public health risk, but it doesn't seem like that fits into really the agenda for tonight, but I have to at least point it out.
Oh, sure.
What do you mean, like what's that?
So there are a lot of people like myself who smoked pot back in the day, and now they think they can just kind of go back to where they used to be. And the situation of marijuana, the potency of marijuana, the complexities of marijuana are very much different from the old days when we had 2 or 3 choices. And I feel that because there's no social smoking places for people, when we look at social isolation and depression, which we see a lot in older people, when we look at financial instability, especially of women across the board, and those kinds of relationships that come up, that is an issue, as well as there's, in my nonprofit, which I've had for 10 years, in trying to get women to be community with each other, it's a difficult task. It's like high school all over again. And women are in a huge amount of denial, my peers, a lot of my peers, about getting older. And so they're getting high at home, and they're getting too high, and because they don't, nor would I ever wear one of those little buttons, alarm alerts things, you know, I carry my phone, but they could fall and break their hip because they were so high. And for people over the age of 50, that's one of the leading causes of the slow path to death. And I just don't think we're seeing that here yet, but I really believe that that's going to be an issue in this population. And we have so many women moving here to be around their families because they're not in a relationship, whatever's not working for them, they're coming to support their family or whatever. And they're not being treated very well by other women in this community who act like they have all the friends they need, which Portland, unfortunately, for being such a quote-friendly city, is not that friendly, as we all know for many reasons. So that's where I work with and what I work with. And I work with the state around that because I work on the state viral hepatitis collaborative, because I've lived half my life with hepatitis C and had to wait till I was on Medicare to be treated, and people are smoking pot. You know, there's just a lot of risks to be looked at for the older population, and our older population is getting larger here. So
it really is, you know, being a bureaucrat is
within that is diversity.
Feel free to jump in whenever.
Pardon me?
Feel free to jump in whenever.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just going to listen for a minute, but thank you, and I appreciate being here. I don't like those bigger meetings down at the city hall because I find that my experience with them is you have to sit and watch everybody eat dinner, and that you get 5 minutes at the end of the hours to be able to talk. And I'm sorry, my time is worth more than that, and I feel I should be more important as a consumer to that group than I was treated, so I don't participate anymore in this, but I was excited to come to this, even though I'm like...
One of the objectives of CPOT is, you know, coming out every other meeting, so I'm just excited to hear is to kind of get out of that setting and bring more people.
Right. Can I say one more thing? One of my other concerns is for dispensaries. I certainly understand HIPAA. I'm a body worker, and that's how I kind of make my money. But I think, and I certainly know about HIPAA. It's incredibly important. But I think that bud tenders need to be a little more educated. I was a judge for the Cultivation Classic last year, and I don't know if you're aware, but they picked a much lower THC than a lot of the pot they sampled for the winning brand, or however they call it. Because we've become, like the rest of our world, the bigger the better, the higher the better, all this, that, and the other. So I believe in this health issue that I have is that without breaking HIPAA, it would be great if bud tenders understood that if they see someone like me come in and ask questions about pot, that you say, you know, if you're on without asking a lot of questions, if you're on blood pressure medicine or you're diabetic, you might not want to you know, to kind of help. When we talk about educating consumers, to me this is educating consumers. I think it's also important with companies that if they do edibles, that they present an edible that people can buy just the chocolate or the jelly or whatever it is without the pot in it. Because I think people are very unfair in their estimation of, sure, I can have this little square of chocolate that has one dosage of CBD, but man, that's fucking good chocolate, man. So, and that's also going to lead to some other issues. So it's kind of, yeah, I have a lot of issues.
I'm sharing another one of those in your chapter this way.
Pardon me? I didn't hear what you said. You were just funning me?
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
Yo, welcome and thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right now we were working on what is one hope and possibly one concern somebody might have related to it.
So we just kind of worry, but not giving people $75.
Well, I hope it gets more equal. I'm kind of concerned about using the word equity, more equitable. You know, in so many ways, that's my one hope. I mean, that's why I'm on this board and New Leaf board, because I'm kind of tired of everybody just being white. You know, everywhere I go, it's like everybody who owns anything, or, you know, if you go to a business meeting, everybody's white. And it's just not right. Just period. For me, it bothers me a lot. And just to comment on your issue, I don't eat edibles because I have the concern of falling asleep. I've eaten them in my pajamas because it just doesn't work for me. So, just saying. So, I mean, it doesn't work for everybody. That's just the reality.
That's part of the reality, too, is educating people around that.
Well, I ate them when I was young, and I've eaten them when I'm older, and it doesn't make any difference. For me, I mean, I started smoking when I was 16. I started cooking it and eating it. So it is just really dicey. It depends on who you are.
Yep.
That's just the way it is. Make a decision. That's all. I'm sorry. And I just had to say, I hope one concern. I mean, that it's my concern that we do what our follow our intent, make it equitable, and that disparity that we all lived with, it should be gone, and we should be moving on. And it really concerns me that this industry that I used to be medical marijuana, and then I woke up one day and we were an industry right before my very eyes. And so it happened so quickly that nobody really caught up on it. They're like, what happened? All of a sudden people are making money where we weren't supposed to. So it's just very concerning to me. But
I think it's pretty interesting that bill only passed by one vote, you know. It's 5-4.
6-4.
Or 6-4, even then.
Yeah.
It's a little bit surprising.
It really is, and it's really concerning because, just like you said, we should have social consumption areas. You know, that's what we're here, and that's what we worked on all last session, was our last term with that. This is an important issue, and everybody kind of goes, you know, you can get high outside. I don't think it's anyway.
Well,
that's all.
The key is to figure out like what was the reasons why some of our representatives and senators are voting no. And I think it's because of some type of law around the environment or something like that.
Yeah, it's called the Indoor Clean Air Act.
Yeah,
that's what shut my place down.
Yeah, so that's the reason why it's hard for them to vote on some type of legislation. So we have to be able to change that particular policy first, and then they can pass some type of law that we can be able to consider.
Well, one of the things that Christina said was that it was all Republicans that voted no. And one Democrat.
I think that was on the social equity one,
Yeah,
right?
that's
yeah,
right.
there was the two. Yeah.
We're mixing two different.
Oh, we are.
Okay. I just wanted to apologize. I didn't mean to ask her to talk about parties. I just meant to say, did it come from communities, industries, lobbyists, or legislators? But it was other legislators. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, thanks for clarifying.
I was going to say, my hope is for medicine. What you brought up, Kaja, really synthesized my hope for me. You know, the issue with social consumption was the Clean Air Act. The argument being that inhaling cannabis is smoke, and so that's bad for you, which is an argument that doesn't understand cannabis as medicine. So my hope is that people understand cannabis as medicine. We've got a long way to go. If people are like, sure, have an edible like you have a glass of wine, it's not the same.
No, not at all. And we have to clarify that for everybody because there's misconceptions everywhere about everything.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So that's my hope is that we really get the average person's head wrapped around cannabis as medicine.
Yes. And we, people voted it in, so you assume that they did, but obviously it's not. They're like, well, no, it's toxic. How can medicine be? I guess medicine could be toxic if taken the wrong way, but if you're smoking it, you're consuming it. I don't get that.
It's just not the same argument as cigarettes. It's just
No.
what the Clean Air Act.
And like I've always said, is you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own set of facts. And the fact is that it's not toxic, and that's just the reality.
Right. Number 4 is our work over the last year. So CPOT's work over the last year has brought us to these 4 areas of focus. And those areas are social equity, research, competency, and sustainability.
Just a bunch of stuff.
I'm not sure that this is necessarily a question. More a way to open a talk or discussion around these 4 areas. And, the first one, social equity, it talks about the cannabis revenue and what we were hoping to do with that, a portion of that cannabis revenue. We talked quite a bit about that tonight, but not so much in the sense, we talked a lot about where is it going, the transparency with where it's going, but we haven't really talked about it. Go ahead.
What is social? What does that mean?
To me, it means that everybody's treated equally. That's what I'm saying. But I could be wrong, because I only been brown.
That's the thing. It goes back to the information and knowledge. Equity and equality is 2 different things.
Right.
So, like when you say everything is equal, then that's not equity. So, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
I do.
Understand what is social equity? What does that mean?
I'm saying that everybody's on an equal playing field, maybe. No? Don't you think? Yeah. Equity, everybody's on an even playing field.
The way I kind of reading this, probably wrong, is that we're using revenue generated by cannabis and the cannabis tax to lift up a certain part of the population that was disproportionately harmed by cannabis being illegal. And I think for what CPOT's done, that really honestly has been the focus. I mean, we haven't gotten to research yet or competency. We spoke a little bit about sustainability, and these are things that we've put into our recommendations. But I know just from all the other members and listening to them, it's really been something that everyone's kind of had in the back of our minds and thinking about the other pieces too. And that's how we've used the term social equity in that sense. I'm not sure if that necessarily means equality for everyone but in the sense that we've been using it as kind of move resources, but in a way that we recognize that a portion of the population was disproportionately harmed because of the laws and prohibition, the way it was set up. And unfortunately, we can't use that money to purchase a new mindset of people, because really that's what it would take to clear the table and change people's minds and not have it be a systemic. Racism be a systemic deal, and especially when looking at the cannabis industry.
When I first thought about social equity, I thought about society in general, and how people can go to a bar and drink if they want to, and people can go to a hookah bar and drink or smoke if they want to. But we can't be treated that way, and that's what fits into that kind of bigotry.
There's a lounge.
Oh, yeah. I would not go there, but I understand there is.
Yeah.
There's some other places around town.
I've never been there.
There's a lot of places around town, that are on the down low. But the reality is, I wanted to be up front. I wanted to show, that was my goal as a Mexicana, I wanted to show that all of us can do this. Why can't we? Why can't we be treated equally? That's all I'm saying, and that's what social equity means to me. I just want to make it clear.
And, in the city, because I think this has come from the city of Portland, a lot of these definitions, I believe, or the Bureau, because it's part of CPOT, and I know that when I'm looking at social equity, let's say grant for my business, or not grant, but I never remember the name of it, but where our license fees get deducted. So it encompasses, it looks at small businesses, so the size of your business. Have the business owners had felony convictions or some felony charges, I don't remember, related to cannabis. And, well,
so much paperwork.
Can you explain that? Christina, I butcher it every time when we talk about.
My mom had to go through that.
I'm sorry, I was more focused on
I was talking about how licensing, we use social equity when thinking about when we pay our license fees, how it's deducted. I'm kind of trying to create a sense of what this definition of social equity means as far as the work that we're doing and things that we've done or the city has done.
If we're looking at it from a licensing aspect, in my honest opinion, our license fee reduction should not be called social equity. That does not provide social equity for the industry. It's more small business support. So currently we are, it's failing for small business support as it is. So currently as a program, we're looking at different avenues that we could revamp it and provide more of a reduction to the industry as a whole.
So I have a question that might be aside from this whole thing, but I feel it's really important. Who was the, in my opinion, idiots that allowed other states to be able to bring their business into Oregon and take over Oregon?
You mean bring their money into Oregon?
Yeah, to bring their money into Oregon. Because I think we really screwed ourselves in terms of this social equity when that happened. Because we could be funneling all that money into supporting more dispensaries, more medical marijuana research, and training people around that. And instead, people are going to places like Electric Lettuce and some of those other companies that are owned by other people. And it's like Mickey D's.
I promise I didn't plant Jackie here tonight.
Sorry, I'm an old after this. You get what you get with me.
Well, yes.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
it
It infuriates the fuck out of me. Oh, you probably can't take that. It infuriates the hell out of me.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
At the last minute before recreational cannabis went legal. And it was probably a really nice lunch meeting. But that's my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that was the worst mistake Oregon made that's made people go down under the ground again in terms of cultivation, in terms of usage. I think we've lost a lot of our medical gains. around that whole thing. I think it's just a totally fucked up system, and we should shake the tablecloth and start all over.
Have other states been successful in keeping capital from not coming in?
It's so.
Is that more of like
I mean,
a capitalist thing? Or
it's tricky, right? But I mean, so yes and no. I was talking to a guy yesterday from Oklahoma. You know, they're just in medical right now, and he's from Texas. But you know they're close. Yes. Anyways, there's a lot of business dealings there. So, and they have I believe it's a 5-year resident requirement, or what's proposed in Oklahoma. I'm not sure if it's part of the medical piece talking about rec. You have to be a resident for 5 years, and there's a lot of other rules. Whether or not they actually follow through with that, because Oregon had the 2-year and caved like that. 2 years
overnight.
No more than it had to be 51% Oregon owned.
It's like pimping out.
And so other states are doing that. I don't know what Denver did. I know they're bringing all their money over here, but as far as are other states successful, keeping outside money, there's tricky ways to do it. I mean, companies can do it. We've seen how many LLCs stacked on LLCs stacked on LLCs do you see? But I mean, it's also something that it's one more roadblock. It's like the way I look at it as a business owner in Portland is I would rather that roadblock be there, and maybe it'll prevent it happening from 10 additional times, you know, and so that's just a little bit more opportunity.
So would that fall under the research priority? To find out
about policy? About
other states?
Actually, not. I don't know. Not that.
That would, I think, that could be under sustainability, possibly, or a portion of sustainability.
Because it says national, statewide, regional.
I think the numbers
legalization of recreational
Yes. So other states do have residency requirements. Like Washington has 6-month residency requirement.
Is it 6 months now?
In Washington, yes. So Oregon did have the 2-year residency requirement, and they immediately removed that because they were afraid that it was going to harm the industry, just due to outside investment. I personally think that it did more harm by removing it, because it is larger corporations, especially Canada. Canada's really moving in, and so it's harming the small local Oregon craft cannabis businesses.
When I used to first be involved in pot, we used to have a big table and a screen door. And we used to take the pot, we'd move it back and forth, I'm serious, against the screen door, sold it for $20 a kilo. It was very easy. When I look at what is in cannabis these days, it fucking scares the hell out of me, because it makes us, in my eyes, it's like turning us into Amazon. And we do not need to do that. This is a sacred medicine. This is the medicine that helps heal people. It's also for getting high. Don't get me wrong.
What in particular do you think is in the cannabis that you're referring to?
I've seen it work. My nonprofit started through my work in HIV and AIDS. We're talking back in 1986, 1987. I watched marijuana make a huge difference in people's lives and allow them to live a bit longer and in a little bit better of a way than a lot of other people were living. I've seen it do incredible stuff for people with epilepsy, myself, cancer, those kinds of things. Traumatic head injury. My partner got a traumatic head injury, and there's a medical marijuana group that charges nothing that goes to group homes that deal with medical head injuries and gives free medical marijuana and does case histories and does chart notes and does everything. They make no money. That's where I think it's medicine.
No, I know that. I agree with you.
Okay, then I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
Saying is like what you feel they're putting in the cannabis now is different. So what I'm asking you is what in particular are you referring to? That
I just think they're making it too high of a THC. Yeah. It's that American way with the bigger the better, and it's not necessarily so.
Okay, so the growing methods of them growing it to produce the high THC rather than just the more of a like a with CBD, all the cannabinoids.
All the cannabinoids, and look at how we can help more people with dementia or people with traumatic head injuries. I just think we could be training people who maybe were not treated right in the early days of marijuana to take the technology in that way versus just more stores.
Because it's against the law for a bud tender to mention some type of medical aspect of like, okay, this can help you with this particular condition.
And I understand that, but that's why I was saying not to go against HIPAA, but to say if you by any chance have high blood pressure, you might not want to pick from this part of the shelf. You know, you might want to look at a lower THC. There's a dispensary that I've been to. It's on 21st, right before you cross over the highway going north. It's a little organic house thing. And they have a senior shelf. And I think it's wonderful. I mean, I send people from my class in there because it's especially a senior shelf. So it's looking at a lower THC, something that's a little bit easier for people to tolerate. And of course, you can't do that with medical conditions, but I also feel that we're losing some of our medical ground in terms of people who feel they can make enough money selling medical that they can stay afloat. Yeah, I hope I explained it better that way.
And you know, actually, she just talked about it. Oh my God. That we have these exit bags that are, I mean, I'm sorry, it's just a real problem for everybody I know because they're just being thrown away. And why aren't we recycling these? To be sustainable.
Tens of thousands of pop-top containers.
Yeah, those too.
Daily.
Sustainability again.
Why don't you get a little piece of paper and bring in your thing and they can use a tong and just pick it up from a jar and put it in there and hand you the little card like they hand you the smoke-free card. Does that make sense what I just said?
Or no.
So you'd have a big container with all these pre-rolled joints, say for example. So you would bring in your little container, like we're doing with bulk shopping.
Well, and labeling. Yeah. There's a lot of things that could be done to not have all of that excess, but because of labeling rules and packaging rules.
You don't require the same for alcohol. Why are you requiring more for marijuana?
Because it's marijuana. That's really scary. It's the kind of bigotry that's involved in this particular drug.
So let me ask, do you guys know where that actual term marijuana came from?
Sure, I do.
You know that it's rooted in racism?
Yes,
so,
marijuana.
Right.
There's a whole song about it in Spanish.
So I'm just curious, like, because it's in our state law.
Oh yeah.
The term marijuana. Like, we can have a legislative concept to change the term.
Good.
I mean, that's no budget requirement, which is a change in language.
Minority business owners, because as long as we're operating in a
right.
Governed by words.
And I agree that it's a really bad. I mean, it's supposed to be to make you feel lower, to make the drug feel, you know, less than, just like they want to make us feel less than. And so I totally agree with you. And I use the word cannabis because I choose to. It's more scientific, makes more sense. It's like saying you're going to take some aspirin, you want to take some, you know, tree bark from that tree. You know what I mean? It's just let's get real with our language. But I still feel it's all part of counter bigotry. Yeah. People go, what do you call this? And I go, I call it pot.
Yeah, pot, weed.
Pot.
But I'd never call it marijuana. I don't know.
Well, as a Mexicana, marijuana, you know, it's all about it. They even call them churros in Mexico, a joint.
Churros.
Yeah, you know, because it's shaped like a churro. It doesn't make any sense.
You have a long way to go, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, we have quite a distance.
So when we look at these 4 areas, we're actually it's 7:45 already. So we have about 15 minutes until we switch back over to kind of more of a CPOT meeting format. So looking at these 4 areas, which one is most important to you, and what's not on this list that should be, as far as what the team should be looking at, where the focus should be for the city and the cannabis team going forward?
I think we should just concentrate, I mean, personally, on the legislature on our next session, because it doesn't seem like they want to do anything. You know, and I'm really afraid that we're getting into that. What I've experienced with cannabis in my whole career with it is that every legislative session they try to take something away from us.
Are we talking state or city?
I'm talking about the state. And the city was great enough, I gotta say, you guys, they went over and they spoke for us at the legislative session and made a huge impact, even though nobody was really listening, but it really affected how we felt about how the city, you know, represented us. I thought they did a great job of defending our positions in so many ways, and the legislature. Yeah, when what's his name? Gosh, I can't think of his name. Brandon went and spoke and testified on our behalf on social consumption. He did such a great job, and you know, we all walked away going, but it's the health department that had the biggest impact on saying that it was dangerous for our staff to be around smoke. So it makes absolutely no sense. It's medicine. Hello. But that's why I think we should concentrate at the legislature. Well, yeah, the Indoor Clean Air Act was actually, it was produced or, you know, brought up to deal with tobacco smoke. And there's nothing the same about them. And we have language from Stanford that was commissioned by the government. You going?
I'm leaving.
Hey, thank you.
Good. This baby's got a timeline.
Yeah, I know. Have a great night. But I think it's really important that we concentrate and, as you said, change that language on that Indoor Clean Air Act, because they let it go on in a hookah bar. How does that make sense? And I actually followed the guidelines that the hookah bar asked me to. The guy called me and said, I need you to come here because I got to tell you how to do this. Make these people part of your business. Give everybody a portion of ownership. And they said no.
So can I ask you, what is the level of policy advocacy within the industry itself when the communities are on cannabis? Because even great ideas, they need so many partners, and the city alone would not be, again, we can amplify and support and stand with, but what's we try not to talk about, we have some constraints about as a bureau at this type of meeting what we talk about, but it is really important to understand who else would champion these ideas at the legislature. When you say Brandon did a great job supporting many views, well, at a certain point, people have to speak for themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm just curious if there are other, I like to put it this way, are there other policy agendas that we should be aligning this with or understand? Who are they led by? Industry leaders, community groups, specific communities, because this is going to have to be anything you get passed, unless you have just a whole bunch of money and amazing lobbyists, you're going to need a coalition. Mm-hmm. So who is that? And who else is putting forward a policy agenda that includes things like this?
For social consumption?
And for any of this.
Oh.
For any of the ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For like the marijuana thing, when you hear it from multiple sources, change it. That makes it so much more credible, because you'll have multiple no's and people resisting and detractors. So you're going to need it from lots of different leaders.
So I'm just curious, who, to back to your point, we will speak for the city, and we'll try to amplify, not speak for communities, but speak for what we want from communities. The communities will also have to speak for themselves, and are there folks ready and willing to do that on the policy advocacy side? That you're,
Well, I was there as Oregon Normal.
What's going on? Educate more people on what's going on, get more people to come out, and get the youth, because the youth is the future.
And I really feel that totally.
So we get the youth started early. I'm 24. It's my first time being to a meeting like this, like hearing stuff like this. So it's like I didn't even know like half of this stuff went down. Yeah, I would not even know. Yeah, for our leader, you know what I'm saying? So like get the youth more involved into this. So by the time we're ready to presentate it, would be a lot more easier. Instead of like intimidating.
Me or the county?
Yeah.
right?
No, I
21, 25. Yeah, we'll see.
I'll get back to you now.
The smarter views.
I like competency. You know, we're embedded in social equity with our people.
I think elders can speak to all of this also. I think
course, yeah,
within
of
this
course.
community and speak to the fact that, oh my God, we're still alive and we've done really incredible things in our life and we smoke
We
pot.
respect you guys too.
That's a good point.
Well, we have a lot of respect for you guys too, you know,
Yeah.
especially the ones that do understand.
Yeah, and you got to speak up. And the thing is that if we spoke up when we were younger, I really feel that we can
Oh,
be helpful in
definitely, yeah.
speaking up and teaching you all
Yeah.
that it doesn't matter what we talk about as long as we stay on topic and we can get our words across. Yeah.
It really is that easy to go down there and to speak up, get up on that list when you go to the legislature and testify.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I understand. Yeah, me too. But I think it's really important and it's vital to train people. I've been the director of Oregon Normal for a number of years, and one of the things we used to do was train people how to testify. You know, unfortunately, Oregon Normal has lost its ability to create, a bigger community because it's legal. Everybody's like lethargic. Well, what do I need Oregon Normal for? You know, but you do need us to get you to the legislature so that you can testify, and you do need us to train you. And people just can't wrap their mind around it because they just want to go to the dispensary. You know, and that's really the sad part of it. They just want to go get high and not sit down and talk with us. I like the meetings when we get high and we talk, but we can talk later.
I feel like there's a lot of people
Yeah, I got a car.
who are just uncomfortable speaking up or going and promoting pro-cannabis type issues because of the scrutiny that they would get from their communities, be it school organizations or if, whatever.
That's one of the things I'm really proud of. Being a Mexicana brought people of color.
You have industry groups too, right? You have industry groups and probably have most industry groups.
No, we do.
Eventually have a policy agenda, so that might be a venue. There are community groups that do, and we'll try to do our part as well. Like for example, we didn't overtly say it, but we talked about the tax allocation work session. Showing up is great, and then after that, following up with your elected officials. They're your elected officials too. You can meet with them, and then also making sure that your testimony is written as well as seen. And I'm just kidding. Those types of things.
There's food over
there. All those things I start meetings in addition to having the right idea and having social partners. Just curious what you thought, and so I appreciate especially you're already doing it, you're bringing people along, you're testifying, but also we need to create a channel to do it more. Because if we're going to get any of this done, it's going to require a community and a business and health, youth, and maybe even interfaith, to push it forward because it's really deep. I know she wants to ring the bell, but
Sure.
what you said as well about the words. I was thinking about what does social equity mean? It's like, well, I know what we're putting here, but when you really look at this, and this is another term that's hard to get into, it's closer to saying what is social justice, because when you talk about war on drugs, that war on drugs was incredibly racist. So let's just go back to racism. So as a part, so are we actually just talking about unraveling all the anti-racist policies in this country? Maybe. And then, but also that's like looking back. Looking forward though, we're also talking about equalizing concepts like, medicine. And that's not just about race, right? But it's about culture, and it's also about science, and it's about, so I think the social equity is kind of looking backwards and looking forwards. But the looking backwards really talks about social justice. And that's a concept I know, and I feel like I know in my heart, but I've never seen in my life, right? So I believe in something I've never seen.
Yeah.
And so, but I think this talks about social justice, but it's also trying to say, but if you're forward looking, you can't drive only with the rearview mirror, right? So we have to keep looking at the rearview mirror, right, so you don't get killed. But we also, if you look forward, so I think this is kind of a hybrid concept. Here's where we are now, but we do want to go forward. So anyway, so I don't know what it means, but thank you for the question, because it makes me look at that and I think we're trying to say things there in code that we could say.